Kathyskutekreations. Today we are going to continue on the murder of the Sphinx, the mystery we're doing. And it's called Shoot the Gap, Block 5. And I have my fabrics down here. I will just do a shot of it because they'll fall off the way I've got it set up. Now this is how I have all my things laid out. It's 6 different colors, and all I did was labeled it all based on the color. Now these are actually 2 different colors, and they're just a little bit off on the shade there, as you can see. Alrighty, first thing we're going to end up doing is some half square triangles. So let's get started. If you're following along, you're going to take your G2 and your H3, which are these, and they're 4 inches, and we're going to put them together. The G3 and the C1, and we're going to put them together. Then the other ones are 3 1/4 inch, and it's the G3 and the C1. And now we're going to make half square triangles, all of these. And we're going to go ahead and do the line down the middle and the space lines on the right and left, and I'll show you how to do that. Here's the one I'm going to use as an example. I'm going to do 2 things. One, I'm going to put my dashed lines down the middle, which is representing that this is where I'm going to cut it when I'm finished. So that's the first thing I do. So you can see the blue line. Then I'm going to take my red one. I'm going to go 1/4 inch from the line. Now I'm going to put my line on the left hand side because it's going to make up for my pin mark. And then I'm going to draw a straight line because this is the actual sewing line for me. Then I'll turn this and I'll do the same thing because this is 1/4 inch on my little ruler here. And I'm making my line. So when you're finished, you have the light blue, which is the cutting line, sewing line, sewing line. And when you get done, you're going to have 2. Now let's go ahead and begin with our story. Now, as always, I'm using a 12-inch needle. I'm using 2 1/2 inch length, and I'm using white thread on this. And I don't need a leader ender because I'm not starting at the edge. I'm starting over here in the corner. I have both of my right sides together of the fabric. Okay, like that. So back with Kitty. She gets herself in trouble every single time. So here's what's happened in this story. She went ahead and she left Dubois back there with all the people at the freezer. And she's getting ready to get on a plane. So in the meantime, she thought she had 2 hours to kill. So she's going to go over there to the museum that hasn't opened yet, but it's the new one that's taking the place of the old one there. So she goes on over there, and she heard Mary Jane, because you know Mary Jane's her, I call her marketing individual. So she's in front of her, and they're going to go down into the tomb. Whoops, let me lift my foot up here. Okay, so that's an automatic. Anyway, as they're going down, it is very dark in there, but she can see a light at the end of the tunnel. It's noon, and so it's super duper hot. Now it's a little cooler in the tunnel, but not that much cooler. She was still sweating and everything. So she's just going on down there, and all of a sudden she feels like somebody's behind her, and then she feels somebody's hand on her back. The first thing I thought was they were going to shove her down the darn steps, you know, because I always think the worst when it comes to murder mystery kind of stories. Anyway, so instead of pushing her, they got real close to her ear and told her to leave it. And that was it. They turned around and left, and she turned around and tried to follow him. She had almost caught up with him. And what they have is, they have these people that they're dressed up in the robes and the little hats, and they're constantly putting their hand out for tourists for money. And she had a guy step in front of her, which distracted her and kept her from catching that guy, which she had almost caught. So I kind of thought, you know, it was almost like a setup, but I'm not quite sure because I don't know if that guy was in on it with the other guy, or just so happens there was somebody out there, you know, waiting to grab whoever come out of that tunnel, you know, for, they call it tip money. But anyway, she fell over the guy's foot, and of course, by then the other guy that she was chasing was long gone. But at least she knew it was a guy because he had the robe on and he had the hat, just like the ones that are there around that museum. Well, anyway, she got to go ahead and catch an airplane, so she didn't give it much thought. Now, while she, before she went to that museum, she went on over to, or excuse me, hold on one second. Okay, I misspoke. When I was saying it, it made sense. Then I got done and I was thinking about it. I was like, that's not what happened. She wasn't at the museum when that happened. She was in the pyramid when all of that happened. Before she went to the pyramid, she went over to the museum because she was trying to find that lotus flower that was on that guy's wrist. And she found it, and at the same time that she found it, she felt a shadow. And when she looked up, it was somebody looking through the window. Alrighty, now that that's sewn, we're going to take our ruler. Make sure your ruler's big enough that your fingers aren't hanging over like this, because you'll accidentally cut yourself if you don't. And I'm putting my ruler tip to tip. And then cutting it. Whoops. Well, that's very stubborn. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and iron it. You iron it open, this is what it'll look like. Just like that. I cut my little tips off. So there they are. They're all done. Let's lay out what we're going to do next. So we're taking our G3, the 2 3/4 by 7 1/4, and we're laying it next to one of the ones that we did. Now you need to cut these down because the two little ones equal, they went from 3 1/4 down to 2 3/4, which is 2.75. The other square, which is this one here, went from the 4" to the 3 1/2. Okay, so that they actually line up and they go next to each other and they'll fit like this. So it fits just like that when you sew it. All right, and this is what we're going to sew next because I got it all laid out. Okay, so let me go back over something real quick. So first she went to the museum, and then she went to the pyramid. So at the museum, when she was in there, she had to glove up in order to touch the papers, okay? Because they're super duper old. And the reason she went to the museum was she wanted to look at that lotus, and she knew that it would be in there. Well, anyway, she found it, but it still didn't look quite the same. I mean, it was the same kind of lotus. The guy on his arm, I just put that upside down, but I guess that's not going to make a difference. Anyway, so she went ahead and she found it, and while she was looking at it, she was trying to get it like better in the light, sort of. And when she did, every time she kept moving her paper over, it was a shadow kept falling on it. So then when she looked up, there was somebody standing at the window. So she looked over at the lady who was standing there, because the lady didn't leave her. She stayed right in the room with her. And that lady even had her hands all gloved up also, in case she needed to touch it. So the lady ran over there to the window, and when she did, the person disappeared. So she went to the door real quick and spoke in her language to a guard out there, and the guard took off, and she said, "Can you hurry up and wrap it up?" So Kitty said, "Well, can I get a picture real quick?" And the lady said, "Yes, but you cannot take any flashes." So Kitty hurried up and took pictures before the lady changed her mind and then left. And then that's when she went over there to the pyramid, and then that's when that incident happened. And then that was the tail end of that, because she was headed to the plane next. But that right there tells you she has been warned off already. I don't know what she's been warned off of. Trying to find out who killed the guy, or something about the... I'm going to guess I wouldn't say that it was a cult of any sort, but trying to find out anything else about that lotus tattoo. Whoever was a group in that group or something. I don't know. I have no clue yet at this point. But that was it for the story. I mean, there was a lot more, but that's the gist of it. Now, I saw these blocks made already online. I want to think I've had this... was in my mailbox. It was either last week or the tail end of the week before that, and I just hadn't had a time to get it printed out and get all my fabric and everything cut. I just cut all this stuff yesterday. But anyway, I lost my total train of thought. It'll come to me in a second. Okay, my thought's back. I was going to tell you that when you iron these, it is telling us to iron all of these now that we've made. Not from the very beginning when we did the very first half square triangles, but these right here that we're doing, these strips, to iron them away from the half square triangles when you fold it over. Usually it's iron it always to the dark, and that's what it's stressing. Okay, that was it. For this next part, it is telling you to come in. I'm trying to get this glare off these rulers here. All right, so you put this, get up here, at the corner like this. Come down a 1/2 inch and then mark a dot. And do it on the other end, which I did. I'll have to move it over a little bit. And we're going to do the same thing on this fabric here on the wrong side. So that's the first thing we're going to do this time, because this is different than normal. I took this block here and I took the top one, I faced them together, and I put the fabric diagonal. I went ahead and marked it here like it showed, which is a 1/2 inch from the corner. Did it down here, 1/2 inch from the corner, because that's the line that you're going to be cutting on diagonally. And I went ahead and marked it just like my half square triangle. So the only difference is I went ahead and I put the solid line down the middle in one color, and then my sewing lines, which are the red ones, in another color to keep it straight. And yes, this will be kind of weird when it's done, but this is the way that we need to do it. Let's go ahead and sew that. We're not going to need a leader ender because we're not down at the very tip. We're off to the side. So it shouldn't get jammed in the sewing machine. Now, I mentioned earlier that I have seen where people are posting this block already and they're not coming out correct. You know, at this point, for this whole entire quilt, anyway, just because the pictures are off compared to what you're sewing, the way that they're talking about. As far as I'm concerned, this is an abstract quilt, so nothing's going to match up. And if it doesn't, don't worry about it. Heck, my colors I don't even think go together. And as you heard in the last video, I've already run out of one color unless there's no more use of it. I don't even know what the heck I'm going to use because I haven't seen that fabric in the store since I bought it. So I'm going to have to just throw in some other blue color to make up for it if it has any more in it. So it's not going to turn out at all what it's supposed to look like. And I don't have a problem with an abstract quilt. We're going to cut this and iron it open. So let me get my ruler over here. You're going to end up with 2 pieces. And I believe it says to cut it down and make it a 3.5 by 6.5 inch square. Well, I did them, I cut them, and they're wrong. Why are they wrong? They're wrong because in the picture it shows that the brown was supposed to be on top, not the blue. And when I did it so that the blue, let me turn it and show you how I did it, like this was on top. Now, I cut out another piece. I've got it marked. Here it is with the brown on top. But not only does the brown need to go on top, you need to follow the picture. So the blue has got to be looking like this at the top. In other words, you can't have this end here and that end down there, down here, because then it won't look right. Because I had it like that the first time around pinned, then I looked at my picture and it's like, oh no, it's still wrong. So anyway, so I'm going to set these aside for some other project and go ahead and sew these now and cut them apart. In the picture it shows the blue at the top and this other color at the bottom. So that's what I have. Now I'm going to make sure that they're 3.5 by 6.5. So when you trimmed it down, it became this smaller size. This is the one that's the boo-boo. Okay, let me turn it this way so you can see. All right. It ends up being this size when you get it trimmed down to 6.5 by 3.5. Now let me show you, or let me show you on this piece how I did it to get it down to that size. The very first thing I did is I measured it. So let me do that first to fix this block to make it smaller. Is I took the tips off here. Okay, each end. Took my ruler and made sure that when I took it off, that I lined it up here and made it squared. Okay, then I went back, I remeasured, and now it's making a 7-inch block. So now since you need 6.5, see how it's a 7-inch? Since you need 6.5, you're going to take 1/4 off the right and 1/4 off of the left. And that's going to give you the 6.5 inches. Then when I went to the side here, the first thing I did was I looked to see how big it was, how wide it was. And so what I did is a little more than 4 inches. Let's turn this light off here. All right. So the first thing you want to do is make it 4 inches. So you're just going to go over a little bit each way to take off the 4 inches. It's squared. You can see I've lined it up here on the 4 inch, and I've got some to take off on the side here. So I'm going to do that. I know that it's 4 and I need 3.5. The first thing I do is I move over to the left to 3 3/4. So that's a 1/4 being taken off. Then when I get done take this off, I'll flip it over 3.5, and then I have this 1/4 to trim off here. So that'll be 3.5 wide. Trimming, that becomes 3.5 inches wide by 6.5. And that's it. That's how I did it. That's not necessarily the way that you need to do it, but I'm just letting you know. Now we're going to take the C1 block, which is 6.5 by 4.5. We're going to put the 4.5 at the bottom, the 6.5 upward, and we're going to draw a line from the corner here to the corner here. Okay, so depending on the fabric you use, you may not know where that corner is because you can't see through your fabric. So I bent my fabric down so I can see the corner here. I pinched it a little bit, opened it back up. So there's my corner, and my corner down here. Let's move it up a little bit so you can see the whole thing. So I'm going to mark from the corner down here to up here, because this is our stitching line. That's what we're going to be stitching on. All right, so that's the next step. Let's go ahead and sew it. Okay, so let's stitch this. This is really putting us outside our box for all those that are comfortable and have never done this kind of thing. Forgot to show you. Remember now, whenever I have enough left over, I'll go ahead and I'll create that extra block for myself. So I went ahead and I did that. I didn't show it and explain it. But if you've seen my other videos, you know what I do. So I'm going to go ahead and take this off. Okay. Because we're going to fold this back and we're going to iron this. And then I'm going to have this little piece for myself, which I will iron open also, because I keep all of these. So after you're done trimming that one, it looks like that. And then we're going to take this G2 unit that we did earlier, and we're going to attach it to these, to that right there. So let's sew that together. That was kind of weird looking too. That's what that piece ends up looking like. And now we're going to take these little teeny weeny pieces here. So we're putting the G2, and we're going to connect this one. And we're going to sew them together. And what they want us to do, they're wanting us to draw a diagonal line from here to here, because we're going to put it on the edge of that. We're making a flying geese, although I don't know the purpose of the blocks being so big. We're taking this one here and we're putting it there. But let's make the flying geese. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to take this piece, and I folded it down so I could figure out where the corner was, because it wants you to go from corner to corner. I'm not quite sure if they did it this way so that it wouldn't go down into your sewing machine, or what they were thinking. I'm not quite sure, but let's just do it and see how it turns out. I went right down my little circle. That's one. And then we're going to fold this over up at the iron, because you're going to need to put this on there and sew it just like that after this one's attached already. So let's do that first. Okay, so let's go from the nose down to the end over here. Let's see how that works. what it looks like when it's done. Now we're going to take our G2, which is 1 1/4 by 6 1/2 inches long, and then we're going to sew it to this, and then we're going to sew it to the C1, which is 1 1/4 by 4 1/4. These are so tiny, you don't really need to be pinning them unless you want to. Be sure if you go this direction like I'm going that you don't flip this up. So hold it down if you have to. It doesn't come up on you. There we go. Okay, so you're going to take this last strip that's on there and you're going to lay these out like this. Okay, that's 6 strips. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And we're going to sew each one of these rows together. So just take your time. You want to make sure that you match up right here. Okay, and make sure that you, if you need to, then you're going to flip that fabric so you can nestle those corners. Let's do that. The whole thing open. Okay, when it's all finished, this is what you will have. It's 12 1/2 wide by, I think it was 15 1/2. And I'll have it up there on the design wall with all the other ones. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Now don't forget, when you did these edges here, these things here, that to avoid losing the tips, that you went and you marked them. Okay, so they all turned out okay. All right, what a funky looking block. I'll see you all next time. Thanks for watching, everybody. Give me a thumbs up if you liked it. Subscribe if you haven't yet and you'd like to get some notifications of the other videos that I do. Bye-bye. It kind of fell over a little bit, but you know what? It went ahead and it bloomed. That one's leaning over the sidewalk here.